This story begins with Gallos, the most powerful wise man in the world with incredible mastery over magic. However, despite how strong he is still not happy. Because in this world there are 4 types of magical emblems. You are born with one completely at random and you can never change it. The first emblem is the one he has, and it specializes in creating things. The second in enhancing. The third in consecutive shots. And lastly, and most importantly, the fourth emblem, the most suitable for any type of combat. He knows he will never reach all his potential with his current state, so he decides to perform a spell to reincarnate his soul in the future, to see if, with some kind of luck, he is born with the fourth emblem. Thus, our protagonist is reborn as a young man named Matthias Hill de Chammer, who is currently heading towards the capital of the country to take the entrance exam to the academy because his plan worked. And now he has the emblem that he longed for so much. While he still has some time, he takes a walk around the city, and passing through a blacksmith shop, he stops to see if he can get a good sword. In the store, there is a girl named Alma, who is asking the blacksmith to make her a sword with great urgency, because her friend broke hers. For the blacksmith, this is almost impossible, because although he can make the sword, he should enchant it, and that would take days of time that his friend obviously does not have. Here, the protagonist gets brave and offers to enchant it for free. And in a single moment, something that the blacksmith makes fun of because he thinks it is impossible. In addition to the fact that Matthias has the so-called failed emblem, thousands of years have passed since the protagonist lived as Gallos, and apparently, in all this time, the magicians have weakened. For some reason, they still consider the best emblem as if it were rubbish, but Alma decides to trust him. While they wait for the blacksmith to forge the sword, they start to chat. Alma tells him that she left her parents' house because they were going to force her to get married, and she also left with her friend, Luri. At that moment, Luri appears, and instantly these two have a crush of love at first sight. But leaving that vulgarity aside, the blacksmith arrives with the sword, and it only took a second for the protagonist to enchant it. He did such a good job that Luri accidentally ended up cutting the table because she didn't know it was so sharp. After that, we go directly to the entrance exam, where Alma and Luri manage to pass. It's then the protagonist's turn, and he is confronted by Gia, captain of the royal army. As is obvious, the guy is honored to do nothing to Matthias because he is too powerful, and in a couple of sword clashes, disarms him. Next, we move on to the magic exam, where again we see the difference between ordinary humans and him. Because another thing that has changed over time is that now spells are performed by reciting strange phrases. Something very cliché. However, in ancient times, it was not like that, because it takes longer, and makes the spell much weaker since you do not concentrate on what is necessary. This is noticeable when a simple spell from the protagonist destroys the examination area, leaving everyone shocked. After this spectacle, with the 3 inside the academy, comes the moment when the director, this man named Edward, gives a welcome speech and takes the opportunity to call Matthias to his office. Although at first, protagonist thinks that he is going to be expelled for having destroyed the exam area. In reality, what the director wants is to ask him for help. The director is aware of how strong he is and also wants him to teach the entire academy to use magic without spells, as it is an art that has been lost after all these years. However, there is a slight problem. This is the second academy, and the first academy governs the teaching criteria in the kingdom. They are the ones who promote magic with spells, so they have to pay attention to them no matter what. In order to change that, they must beat them in the inter-school tournament. To do so, the protagonist has to teach teachers and other students to use magic without spells. Over the next few days, surprisingly, they don't take long to master it because, as Matthias said, it is much more efficient to cast magic without talking nonsense. And yes, that's what he does. Then, there is a cheesy moment with Luri because they hold hands. But you know how it is. Exaggerate and get red over simple moments like those. Then the day of the tournament arrives, and Matthias notices something quite strange. He feels the presence of a person with 10 times more mana than his, something that could only be possible if that person were a demon. The natural enemies of the human race whom he left almost extinct in ancient times. That guy is devilish, And by his name, it's obvious he's a demon. But humans are stupid, so there's nothing to be done about it. The fight starts, and as soon as he sees him, Matthias discovers his true identity. He forces him to use spells without words to make him nervous. And there he realizes that the demons have infiltrated among the people in order to weaken them from within their society by giving wrong teachings about magic. At the same time, he takes advantage of his opponent's carelessness to show everyone the true form of the demon that he has, and finally defeats him without problems. Feat in itself, because currently, several S-rank heroes would be needed to defeat him. Due to all this commotion and the great achievement it represents, Matthias is called before the king, who grants him as a reward whatever he wants. What the protagonist asks for is access to the minerals and resources of the dungeons, because all of these objects have a high magic potential. In the past, they were used to create weapons, potions, and other things. Knowledge that the boy wants to make known to everyone. Once the matter of his reward is resolved, the king asks him for his opinion on what is happening in the kingdom, because the 4 royal wizards had disappeared. They were part of the order of magicians that appeared centuries ago, which suggests that they were all demons. This also confirms the theory that the protagonist had in mind. The weakness of humans is due to the plan that the demons have been carrying out for years. Afterward, the protagonist warns that the demons are going to start attacking because they have already discovered them, and calculates that, in about 3 months or so, they could begin the siege of the entire capital. To prevent this, he proposes creating a barrier of divine category around the city. A barrier that could be created in a month if everyone from the Second Academy helps. In addition to that, he also asks that they allow the teaching of magic without spells to strengthen the students. With all this said, he goes to the warehouse of treasures. There, he finds a sword that he created when he was Gallos and a necklace to level up much faster. As he is finally equipped, he decides to go to a dungeon, though not before inviting Luri and Alma to join his team. They initially refuse because they think they are too weak and do not know how to fight very well. However, the protagonist shows Alma that he can also use the bow with magic, and promises Luri to teach her about enchantments, so they go to the dungeon. After Alma practices a bit, the couple goes about their enchanting tasks, creating weapons from minerals in the dungeon, while collecting stones from the monsters they defeat. They go deeper into the dungeon as they defeat more monsters that look like they came out of Pokemon, until they arrive at the number 25 floor, where Matthias sets up camp for the girls to rest until he returns from the 30th floor. Something that surprises them both, because the most anyone has ever gone down is 23. According to legend, some people arrived at 30 who were blessed by the god of magic, Gallos, who we already know who he is. No matter what they tell him, he goes down to destroy all the monsters he encounters, including the floor boss, a giant snake that throws acid, which he ends up defeating without any problem. Once his expedition is finished, he goes to the guild to sell materials, including the boss's head, which leaves the receptionist speechless because no one has ever brought something like that. It is so expensive that they will probably leave the guild in the red numbers. The most surprising thing is that the magic stone of the boss is the size of a coconut. But still, the protagonist thinks it is enough for him because he wants a much bigger one. And I'm talking about magic stones, just in case, because it's what he needs to complete the barrier to protect the city. But here the problems begin. As demons appear in the sky from nowhere, Matthias quickly reacts and tells his companions to take care of the weakest ones, because he is aware that they will be able to buy enough time while he deals with the others. Indeed, they do so. First, the protagonist goes after the 2, making them follow him until the bald man is distracted by the arrow of the soul, which has a spell that weakens him. Then, the one-on-one fight begins, which ends up with the protagonist completely dominating the bald man, thanks to his excellent management of the sword, along with its powerful spells. On the other hand, the girls run away from the bald man every time they hit him with an arrow, keep their distance, and make him waste as much time as possible. After that, he comes to their aid, and thanks to an arrow of the soul that prevents the demon from escaping, he manages to give him the coup de grace with his sword, killing that demon as well. The bad thing is that all of this is attracting too much attention from many people. so the protagonist flies them away while they watch the sunset together. From there, we go to the meeting with the king, who once again offers them rewards. However, on this occasion, Matthias interrupts things because he detects that someone is spying on them with magic. He casts a spell that affects the demon through his own spell, thanks to the scream that hits him. The king realizes that the spy is one of the magicians who escaped, named Edgar, the captain of the Order of Magicians. Thanks to the attack, Matthias also detects the exact location of the demon, which is apparently hidden in the ruins of a destroyed city. His group will go to defeat that asshole, but first they need to find an old friend of the protagonist to fly them. This friend is a legendary dark dragon called Iris, who at first threatens the protagonist with a voice just as serious as the big show. But when she sees that he repels her spell and realizes he is the reincarnation of Gallows, she speaks with a lowly's voice and begins to beg for her life. From there, the protagonist takes the opportunity to heal the wings that had been damaged in an explosion, and they fly away. The protagonist arrives in style, breaking a demon in two while the other two crash, because Iris had forgotten how to land. After that, they infiltrate the castle, and thanks to some convenient spells they find Edgar. It turns out he is dumber than they thought, because he believes the protagonist is an imposter, etc. After a short fight and a headshot from Alma, he falls to the floor like a sack of potatoes. Now the real rival is coming. The demon who is managing everything from the shadows. This demon looks like a trans and, in an attack, takes off Matthias's arm, leaving him almost finished. But the demon screwed up because all that was part of the protagonist's plan. He allowed himself to be cut to use his analysis spell and thus decipher the type of magic the demon uses. Now, after all his tricks, it's time for Matthias to get completely serious. He heals his arm and, without problems, dodges and cancels all of his enemies' attacks. Then, he fills the demon with mana using some magic stones, and the demon explodes, exposing a strange pillar called Dragon Vein. This pillar has a spell that will summon about 5,000 monsters from the dungeon inside the capital, but it will take a while to activate, so they have time to go back and try to deal with it. Plus, the explosion made the location change to 10 kilometers outside the capital. A little convenient. Finally, on the way home, they start thinking about what Iris will do now. Matthias suggests that she take human form and join them on their adventures. They stop for a moment, and Iris transforms into a redhead, who, fortunately, is well cut from the shot so that no one sees her naked. After that, they take advantage of the moment to inform the director about what happened and ask him to please accept Iris into the academy, something Edward agrees to. However, she will have to take the exams, because she is an ultra-powerful dragon who has only been a human for a couple of hours and does not know how to measure her strength. Everything goes as expected. The written exam is obviously a mess, but in combat, she has to face Gili, captain who faced Matthias, and who ends up defeated as if he were an NPC. This time, she sends him flying until he gets stuck in a tower. The magic exam is the most entertaining because she can't aim well, so she explodes the entire area to hit the targets, something that drives the director crazy. So much power seems strange to him, but he still can't fail her. We move to another day when the preparations for the barrier continue to advance, although not as fast as they would like. The director of the first academy refuses to participate and becomes very reluctant when they send for him. To make him shut up once and for all, protagonist proposes a tournament between both academies so that the loser obeys the winner without saying anything at all. The old man accepts, in exchange for Matthias and the two in his group not participating. This is not the biggest problem, because 2 days later, and already in the tournament, the old man brings some of his best students. However, 5 randoms from the second academy destroy and humiliate them without even breaking a sweat, because they cast spells on them before the others could recite their stupid words. Despite their defeat, the old man continues insisting that they are cheaters, etc. He starts saying stupid things and ends up declaring that he will not obey the king's order to teach magic without words. But there, he screwed up because the king was hiding and puts him in prison for insubordination. After resolving that problem, the students of the first academy adapt well with the rest, and they decide to help because they are tired of their director, who was a tremendous idiot. Now the protagonist and his friends head back to the dungeon, where they will use the magic stone to summon another monster. Matthias helps Luri to clear up the summoning spell, and then Iris gives her a little bit of mana. But remember, we're talking about Iris, so that little bit is a lot because her mental power scale is stunted by a certain wizard who once said he wanted to experiment a little and shattered 3 mountains in one fell swoop. Due to the large amount of mana that Iris put into the stone, the monster they end up summoning is a very dangerous dragon. Iris starts as bait, taking the worst part by receiving the blows, while the protagonist creates magic circles and the other two shoot arrows. This is to create a spell that will make the dragon explode when it uses its fire breath. Thank goodness the plan works perfectly. But Iris trips and doesn't manage to get out of the explosion radius, so the protagonist goes to save her by putting a shield on her, although that means he receives the damage directly. However, it's Matthias, so that doesn't even tickle him. When they return to the academy, the only thing left is to start training, because Iris officially joined the group. For that, Matthias puts the little dragon to practice her balance while writing the soul arrows, and teaches Luri to make layered enchantments to create even more powerful weapons, like the sword that she will make, the bow for Soul, and the blunt spear for Iris. Upon seeing all that progress, the protagonist understands that soon he will be able to leave the academy, because there will be no more he can teach the rest, and he wants to follow his own path to become stronger. We jump a little in time, and Matthias is busy with the final preparations for the barrier. The problem is that the demons are appearing, and he cannot move, so he leaves that in the hands of Luri and Alma. They do their job well and take care of the 2 that appear on the outskirts of the city without problems. But the one that appears inside the academy is a completely different story because he is much more powerful, and Luri has a very bad time because the enchantment to defeat him does not come out because of her nerves, while the rest of the students hold on as they can. In the end, Luri achieves it because he is motivated by seeing her classmates trying so hard, and he gives the soul arrow to Alma. That hits the target without any problems, leaving the demon weak so that the rest of the students can finish it off. Everything seems perfect, but at that moment, a much more powerful demon arrives. And not only him, but behind him comes many more. The boys find themselves in trouble because that is too much for them. But nothing happens because Matthias comes to the rescue and begins to cut all those demons one by one in a matter of a few seconds. In the end, they all celebrate the victory, and they've finally completed the holy barrier. So the only thing left is to take care of the monsters that were going to invoke the dragon vein, which are just about to arrive in the city. In principle, the random students will worry about all those weak bugs. So, the protagonist and his group focus on the strongest ones. When the time comes, they begin to be absorbed by an even stronger one. Matthias wants a challenge, so he begins to feed it with magic stones so that it finishes its transformation quickly. Here, its Pokemon lion form is revealed, maybe Solgaleo. Even though the monster regenerates quite quickly, it is no match for the cuts and Matthias's magic, which, after a couple of spells, leaves him headless. Once again, everything goes well, and all that remains is to celebrate. But Matthias has something else in mind, because he has nothing else to teach the school students, and he must also continue investigating the dragon veins. To do so, he must leave the academy and become an adventurer, something that the director clearly understands. So, to support him, he gives him a scholarship so that he can continue to be part of the academy, even if he does not attend. This way, he will not get into diplomatic problems with other cities and kingdoms. He also takes the opportunity to give scholarships to the girls, and our protagonist's group will begin new adventures. The group begins its journey, heading towards the city of Malkia, where the protector, the power of a dragon vein, resides. The only thing that surprises them is that the city is sitting on top of a dungeon. Something totally stupid because of the danger that it entails. Although surely that is also due to the influence of demons. To arrive as soon as possible, they decide to go through a forest where there are supposedly very strong and yes, also quite dangerous monsters, led by an intelligent one. But for our protagonist, the word fear doesn't exist in his dictionary. So he starts to go through the forest, while his waifus set up a mini camp. He's going to hunt, There, he meets the intelligent monster, who is nothing more than a monkey and also a wild boar to eat. Then, the time left in the forest is a kitchen montage in which Luri creates the kitchen tools and all that. Iris collects wood with her bare fists, and Alma makes an effort because cooking is not something she can do very well, say the least. Not even the little dragon can tolerate the strange soup she made. Now what matters is the city of Melkia, which is in quite bad condition. The worst thing is that there is a light pole connected directly to the dragon vein. Very dangerous because of how unstable it is. In fact, it is immediately confirmed because a salesman warns them to stay away because that thing has killed 10 people so far this year. And it is precisely at that moment that it ends up exploding. But well, our boys are quite resistant, and that little thing does nothing to them. Then they take the opportunity to talk to the seller, who tells them that all this is the fault of Dokiel, the new feudal lord of the city. Dokiel had prohibited the use of magic stones, and also sent all the adventurers to find a boss on the dungeon floor that they could not defeat. That's why it looks like an abandoned town. The next step is to go to the guild to gain the permits and enter the dungeon. However, the problems continue to appear, because to enter the guild, they have to accept becoming the messengers from Dokiel. On top of that, a woman arrives from the emergency room, as many people have returned seriously injured from the expedition, and there are not enough healers in the entire town. Matthias agrees to help, and the first thing he does is analyze and list the patients by severity. Then he organizes all the doctors present, and with everyone's efforts, they do not let any patient die. After that, he can talk to the head doctor, who gives him more news about the city. It turns out that the old feudal lord died out of nowhere, and for unknown reasons. In addition to that, lack of medical personnel is due to the fact that it is prohibited to continue teaching the healing arts. At this point, one would have to believe that there is no one so stupid as to make such decisions to ruin a society in that way. However, in reality, that also happens. Although the new feudal lord is probably one of them, already at night, when they prepare to sleep, Matthias talks to them about how he is going to unmask everything that is happening. For this, he sent a letter to the capital to ask the king for permission to intervene. He also has trouble sleeping because he is in the same room as Luri, who is in the same bed, while the other two spend their time talking in peaceful dreams. The next day, they inform the guild and the receptionist for their report to the feudal lord. The next day, they go to the dungeon and kill the monster that caused so much trouble. In some scenes that do not appear in the anime, they inform the guild, and the receptionist passes her report to the feudal lord, who begins to move his minions to attack them. Matthias realizes this instantly and begins his plan by allowing himself to be captured, because they believe that he is a simple healer and that the girls do the work for him. But Iris takes them down one by one with a simple blow. Now, they have received the letter from the kingdom, and they head towards the castle, where they meet with Eric, a royal messenger, who grants them the power to arrest Dolgel, and will also support them in the infiltration of the castle. Although in reality, they don't need it because they won't infiltrate as such, since there are a lot of bandits waiting inside. And Matthias wants to be polite, entering like a boss through the main door. And well, you know how a spell ends, by bandits. After that, they find the secret lair of the silly ruler, defeat more of his minions, and knock him out with a spell because he is nothing more than a useless and worthless human who works for the demons. Here they find out about the plans of the demons, who are feeding the dragon vein to make it active. As a trigger, they have summoned a horde of monsters that will arrive in the city in 2 hours. So, they are going to look for the dragon vein, and when they find it, Luri is trying to stabilize it while the other two protect it from the monsters of the dungeon. At the same time, our dear protagonist heads towards where the bricking demon is. Here, he has to fight his strongest rival to date, not because he is very powerful, but because he is being guided by another demon who knows a lot about the protagonist and has also given him some magic spells to try to exploit Matthias's weaknesses. The protagonist is a boss, and after a few attacks, he breaks the enemy's magical barrier, which almost confirms that he is the reincarnation of Gallios. After that, the demon gets angry and releases his muscular form, and the protagonist takes out his arm and then his head easily. Luri stabilizes the vein successfully, and with that, the rest of the monsters disappear, leaving the only objective to find the demon who was guiding things by Bluetooth. But because he is using a magical VPN, they cannot find his location. Luckily for the protagonist, he left a strange magical trail. After that, the demon cut off the communications. So in order to take advantage of it, he must go for an object that he created in ancient times, and that is currently in the city of Redenia, which is in another kingdom. But before that, he has to go through the capital to ask permission from the king and also take a walk around the academy that is being remodeled to make it more resistant to attacks. This happens quickly. He just helps in half a second with the destruction, while Iris accidentally destroys things by accident. From there comes the approval of the king, and finally, they leave. Then we jump directly to the Redenia Guild, where the king is waiting for them to thank them for coming to help and facilitate their access to the rank A exams in the guild. The bad thing is that the instructor who will take the test is this guy with a Kirito voice called Giluas, who is a genius and has never lost a fight. After that, he fails most of them, without even fighting because they seem too weak to him. Yet, he is not there to behave that way. In fact, quite the opposite, because without fighting, he approves the other three and goes straight for Matthias. He has heard a lot about him and is very interested in a fight between the two to measure their strength. That guy has merits because he doesn't use magic, technically. Yes, but not at will, because he is not aware that he uses magic to enhance his body and attacks. That is what makes him worthy of respect because, according to the protagonist, he could surpass him in terms of strength if he managed to master his magical powers. This is because he even manages to imitate Matthias's skills only by seeing them. Even so, for the moment, he will have to lose, but the protagonist will give him a guide that he described personally, and with which he will be able to learn quickly. After that, now that he already had access to restricted territory, he will go to the area of the kingdom in which what they are looking for is located. Although before that, Giluas warns them that there is something quite strange in that city, and that they must be careful because several adventurers have disappeared. Once they pass the checkpoints, upon reaching said checkpoint, they discover the truth of everything because the guards give them some passes that have a secret demonic code written on them. It is an order to get rid of them, as the guards were humans. The most likely conclusion is that the entire town is somehow controlled by demons. In the meantime, they have to deal with the mercenaries that go to attack them, although with a magical device that has smoke that makes people sleepy. Alma and Luri manage to knock it out without harming them. They also fall asleep because they breathed the smoke. After a prank on Alma's face by Iris, Matthias wakes them up, and continuing on their way on the outskirts of the city, the protagonist finds a secret entrance that connects with the center of the city. So, they decide to advance there while evading the guards using quite convenient spells. When they arrive, they realize that the entire population is like in a trance due to a spell from the demons. They pretend to be in those same conditions and infiltrate the factory, where they are put to work refining minerals to make things that kill people. Matthias carries out his plan to recover the city. In this case, what he does is put Iris as a decoy while he takes care of the demons that appear little by little without their boss. Their plan is working. Little by little, they take care of the demons until that guy realizes it and gathers the rest to go for the minerals and blow them all up. But to his bad luck, Giluas appears, and a fierce fight begins between them. In the end, he won the fight by a little, because they were the same level. However, nothing ends here because the same demon, who is actually called Sardius, reanimates the corpse of the demon to threaten the protagonist with breaking his seal. Finally free, he will destroy the world and do villain things. Now that they have solved all this problem, he gives them permission from the guild to enter the restricted area where a kind of pyramid is located with an underground laboratory that the protagonist created in his previous life. Here, the girls take a while searching for treasures, although they only find nonsense that Matthias manufactured in the past. The important thing comes when he decides to activate the machine to track the magical signal of the demon. The bad thing is that at that moment, the seal is about to break, and Matthias discovers that Sardius is behind that. Sardios is a demon that he cannot defeat in his current state, because he would have to use an immortality spell and fight him for centuries until he reaches his level. But in the process, the world would end up in ruins. The good thing is that, just at that moment, he remembers that there may be a small possibility. So he puts the sword that Luri took him to track down, a certain enchanted sword that he created, and that could help him. Luckily, it is in the lair of treasures of his kingdom, so he just has to go and ask the king, who will surely agree without questioning. The bad thing is that there is no time for formalities, because Sardios is already on his way to the capital. So Luri and Alma head directly to the place, while Iris and the protagonist stay to hold back the demon as much as possible. The battle begins. And things look ugly for the protagonist because not even Iris's most powerful attacks tickle him. So, his only hope is that the girls bring the sword to them in time. Unfortunately, they are taking too long because the guard guarding the treasure room does not want to let them in. Although the king ends up arriving and finally gives them permission, Matthias continues to suffer in his fight. For the first time, we see him truly wounded. And while he resists as best he can, the girls find themselves with the sword. The bad thing is that, at the exit of the castle, the bald demon awaits them. The bald demon with whom they fought almost at the beginning of the anime, who has been revived along with the other to stop them from supporting Matthias and attacking the capital from within the barrier. He has 2 students as hostages. So, things will take a while, but the director and more students from the academy arrive to take care of the demon. Now that they are up to the task, the girls continue on their way, and Matthias fights like never before with everything he has, despite it not being enough. But at last, he has the sword in his hands. And Matthias is pierced by the sword of Sardios, who manages to end the life of our protagonist. Matthias pitifully dies, at least for a few seconds, because that was part of his plan. He created that sword with a spell that needed a sacrifice to give them immense amounts of mana. But for this, its bearer must die. Now the final duel begins, which Matthias manages to win thanks to his immense power. But not Sardios, warning him that there are demons much more powerful than him, and that they will not stop once they find out what just happened. After that, his waifu throws her arms out of joy to see that he is alive. And finally, he discharges the excess mana his sword gave to him, which only has one use. After that, they are going to talk to the king to get other rewards. Because Alma wants some treasure, they enter the warehouse, where they discover a cursed fairy arrow, a mineral that they currently do not know and do not know how to refine. Here, it comes to Matthias's mind, a bow that he created in the past, and that came with a set that includes this arrow. But the warehouse manager tells him that they sold it to a pawn shop because they did not know what material it was. Because of that, they go to the pawn shop where they discover the different unknown metals that they have and that they melted. Because he does not know which one is the one in the bow, Matthias ends up buying them all, but so that Luri is not the only one who does not get precious stones. He also buys a mineral to later make a necklace for. However, an emergency occurs, and they are called by the director, who shows them a wooden doll that is part of an army. To use them, they steal energy from humans. So to save the world from the misfortunes that are coming, they will need their help. And with them heading to their next adventure,